At the core of what we do, foundationally at the core of what we do, one of the most important things we have to understand is how we maintain and do our work with the concentration and the focus that our work demands. If you look at any great athlete, there's something they all have in common. And that is, they're able to do the task at hand, no matter the environment they are in, or who is trying to influence the environment they're in. A baseball game, or a football game, or a basketball game, you are surrounded by an audience that has their thoughts or their views of you specifically or your team specifically. And what's important is that the athletes are trained to have laser focus at doing the job or the task that is at hand, and making sure that they do not allow any outside influence to get in the way of the thing that they are doing. One of the things that happens though with us as actors is, as soon as we get in front of an audience, the simple goes out the window. All of a sudden we start performing, or we have an idea of what an action is. We start to demonstrate the action, we start to illustrate the action, we start to over-energize the action, or we start to perform the action. And it loses the simplicity of what it really means to live and do moment to moment, because we're in performance mode. That doesn't mean that the actor is not going to be aware of an audience. Of course we know there's an audience there, of course we know there's a crew there, of course we know there's a camera there, but there's got to be the skill and the muscle that the actor learns and knows how to turn that muscle on so the focus is there and available to do the job at hand. Staying in what I'm doing, what my relationship is, what do I need to get done. 10 million things are going on around him, and all you see is him staying in the moment, knowing what his task is in order to do that task with the simplicity and the energy that that task demands. That takes a master to have that level of concentration and focus. And that's not something that comes just when we need it. Unless that's a muscle that you've developed over years and years and years of constant practice and execution, it's something that needs to be worked at. There's got to be an immense amount of intent to be able to stay in the moment of the world and the circumstances in which you are living. You've got to know how to do that. You've got to understand how to endow things so much, how to endow your circumstances and your life so much that it captures all your attention, all your concentration, and all your focus. Without it, you are easily swayed. You are easily influenced. And we have to understand, when we're working in circles of concentration, the actor has the power to expand or bring in that circle of concentration based on what needs to happen. This is not easy. Because the thing that you do at home in your privacy has freedom because you're experiencing true privacy. How many of us are able to do that in a public setting? It's our job to live our private essence publicly as it pertains to the circumstances of a specific text. Do you have the muscle of full concentration and focus to be able to live the truth of circumstances even though you're not private? Even though it's happening in a public atmosphere. But we take for granted what they're doing because we're watching it as an audience. We don't realize the complexity that takes when it comes to being an actor. Don't take for granted what our work takes. It is so easy for us to be master actors when we're sitting in the audience. What it really takes to do this work. It's not a pick up the script and just do it kind of field. You realize the kind of artists they are and the work they do in preparation to be doing that standard of work. But what happens? We look at it and we see the ease of it, and we applaud it, and we admire it, and we honor it, but we lose sight of everything it took for that to happen. And so it comes to pass that actors think that the work is this simple equation of, internal life, true nature of action, concentration, focus, endowed life, personalization, relationship, being able to really listen in a way that you're not just listening, but you're hearing. What does that take? It takes someone saying, this needs to be worked. And it takes the actor dissolving resistance from everything they already know and start saying, what else? How else can I grow? The greatest fear an actor has is how much they have to learn. It's their greatest fear. Because the actor loses sight that the dancer doesn't, that the violinist doesn't, that the pianist doesn't. You give the pianist Beethoven, they're not going to just pick up the sheet music, no matter how good they are, and just play it. They're going to work it, they're going to exercise their instruments, they're going to stretch out their fingers. These are great masters that prepare. Where do we lose that? Greatness comes from holding yourself accountable for greatness, not for the result of greatness, but the personal desire for what you've been gifted and what you can do with it. You have to constantly be exercising even the simplest of muscles, because it's the simplest of muscles that support the bigger muscles. It's through the fulfillment of these exercises that you will experience monumental growth, because they show you where the muscle needs to be exercised, because you got nothing to hide behind. But they got to be worked. They got to be exercised. And if you don't have the ability to just do the simplest of tasks, what makes us think the support is going to be there for the greater objectives? Like, you can't do that if you can't do this. If you can't open a door without the performance of opening a door, you're not going to be able to break down on your knees screaming, I don't want him to die. It puts a spotlight on the actor of, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What do I need to work on? How do I do it? The easy you can do. It's the stuff that the 1% get hired to do. That's what we're training for. It's so important for us to understand that the usefulness that we have in our work is all the stuff that lives in the space between. The shell that matters. It's not the surrounding of the thing that matters. It's the vessel. You got to be willing to use the space between in the work, not just the shape of things. And here's the thing, we look for fulfillment, right? But don't go after fulfillment, because once you have fulfillment, you're full. You can't digest anything more, because once you're full, there's nowhere else to go. It's not about the constant fulfillment. It's about the constant emptying that gives space to experience more and something different that adds to our library as artists. As a teacher, you always have to have the security and be a pillar to teach. But the danger in that is no longer becoming the student. And who wants to learn from a teacher that's not a student? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I know a lot about very little, but that's not enough for me. I want to know more. I want to be curious. I want the mirror, and I want the mirror to be uncomfortable. You want to know why? Because if it's not uncomfortable, it's not going to force me to grow. No way I'm going to want to get expanded or grow or learn more if I'm swimming in a tepid pool with a pina colada. Something about myself or about life that shakes me up, that causes me to learn. And I'm using the word me as in all of us. And I think the pandemic did that. If you have not learned more about yourself during the pandemic, I suggest you go back and look over the last 2 years and see what it pressed upon. It's those things that then I can utilize not only in my work as an artist, but then understanding and being able to teach those things and then being able to see those things in story. All those little things that we may have missed, it is through the discomfort of the darkness that we then understand those minute moments. We talk about love and light, right? We always hear love and light. Those are wonderful things to attain to and hold up and honor and revere in our lives. But as actors, we have to remember the only way we can appreciate light is by understanding its opposite. That's what our work explores. That's always been what our work explores. Everything is born out of darkness. And I'm not even talking about metaphorically. Look in the sky. If you look in the atmosphere, if you look in space, it's just darkness. And that's what gives substance to light. The stars, right? It's all the space in between that makes that important, that gives that definition. Does that make sense? That's what art is born out of. Do we understand that?
Yeah.
But we're coming into a day and age where we're immunized about the reality of art and we're starting to sterilize it. And that's dangerous because if we start to sterilize art, it loses its function. The function of art is to be able to look at darkness. If we're always in the light, what ends up happening? We get burnt. We can get blinded by the reality if we're looking at the light all the time. And story is not born out of butterflies and rainbows. Story is born out of the human struggle, out of the human fallibility, out of human vulnerability, out of human suffering and struggle and trials and tribulations. That asks of us, or it demands of us, to explore the reality of not only the human experience, but the earthly experience. And that is what is born out of darkness. It's easy to look at the easy stuff. It just is. But that's why very few artists have the opportunity to do what they do. It's those people that have the courage and the bravery and the stamina and the inner constitution and the drive and the passion and the hunger to say this is a reality that we don't want to admit exists. But it does. And it's the reason why everybody, every human being has created something. And now I'm not even talking about art. Every single thing that has been created, from this camera to that table to that chair, has been because of a struggle a human being has had to experience. A chair was born because it hurt to stand up so long. A bed was born because of the discomfort sleeping on rocks. A blanket was born because of the discomfort of the coldness. Light was born because of the inability to see anything else because of all the darkness. But what do all those things have in common that gave birth to creation? The opposite of those things, the darkness of those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That is where story comes from. As actors, we have to say yes to it. We have to look at it. It's something we all have in common. If you have the courage to do that, you can move mountains. You can have a story to tell. And a story that someone wants to listen to. And you want to know why? Because there's someone else out there that will say, me too. You'll never know it, or maybe you will. If you're performing in a Broadway theater with 2,000 people, or your movie is being seen for millions of people, there may be a little boy or a little girl or an elderly man or an elderly woman that sees that story of struggle that says to themselves in a private moment, yeah. And if that doesn't turn you on as an actor, if that doesn't motivate you, if that doesn't excite you to do something spectacular with the gifts that you have been given, I don't know what the intent is for doing this. Because the applause and the ego and the validation will be the most fleeting thing you will ever experience in your life. And it will be like chasing a monkey in the jungle, impossible to catch. Go back to the purpose. Because all the other stuff, what you think of me, your applause, your reviews, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Because it's going to go away. But the purpose, the mission, the intent, the story, the mirror that you create, there's nothing like that. And that's the difference between the artist and the person that says they're an artist. One calls themselves it, the other person just is.